David Tennant is a national treasure, doubly so if you're a trans person. Not only is he one of the most recognisable faces in UK television, but he's unabashedly supportive of trans youth. And whilst it's important to recognise that a part of that is because he himself has a non-binary child, it's also important to note that he hasn't secluded himself and his family using his wealth, protecting them from the harm inflicted upon the rest of the community. He routinely goes out of his way to speak out and educate people on trans rights, regularly setting the internet on fire with cracking t-shirts and empathetic speeches. Of course, not everyone is happy with his message of tolerance, leading a motley crew of gender-critical fascists to try and take David Tennant down, only to find out that if you're going to go after one of the most charismatic people in history, you better be prepared for what's coming. You better have a watertight case. Or, I guess you could just lie, as seems to be the tactic being deployed against David Tennant, not just by J.K. Rowling, but also Graham Linehan and Kemi Badenoch. Thankfully, said lies aren't particularly hard ones to refute, which is why we're here today. But first, a quick content warning for the following: transmisia, medical gatekeeping, child abuse, and suicide. If you like our work and appreciate the research put into each video, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon. You can also support us by liking, commenting, and sharing our work on social media. I'd also just like to take this time to remind our viewers that the statements made throughout our videos are the opinions of myself, the host, based on the evidence I have available to me. They are not and should not be taken as unquestionable fact, which is why we reference everything, because we're valuable. Thus we strive to give you, the viewer, the ability to check all evidence yourself in order to make up your own mind, which is what the reference numbers in the top left corner are for, being numbers that match up with the reference list found in the transcript linked down below. As such, we encourage all viewers to do their own research to reach an informed conclusion about the topic. Hi there, my name is Ethel Thurston, she, her, they, them, and today we're here to talk about how J.K. Rowling has taken to lying about David Tennant in defense of former Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch, more specifically her open cruelty towards the trans community. That's right, the fandom wars are back, and I've got to say, the Whovians seem to be set to win this one, as I'm sure many of you will be happy to hear. So today's topic largely began at the British LGBT Awards with the following speech given by David Tennant.
With the slogan, "I attract the ire of the occasional online idiot," but I don't have social media, so even I have to be told about that by my brilliant wife Georgia, who is the real engine behind anything we do. She educates me about empathy and understanding, and she has been a huge educator for me. But I suppose if I'm honest, I'm a little depressed by the fact that acknowledging that everyone has the right to be who they want to be and live their life how they want to live it, as long as they're not hurting anyone else, should merit any kind of special award or special mention, because it's common sense, isn't it? It is human decency. We shouldn't live in a world where that is worth remarking on. However, until we wake up and Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore, I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up. Whilst we do live in this world, I am honoured to receive this. I'm thrilled to be here and to be a part of this night. Pride is very important in our house. It's a family affair. We have skin in the game. So this event tonight thrills me. It gives me hope. It gives me fire. It gives me energy and deep joy. And even if I feel I don't really deserve this, I'm very pleased and very proud to be receiving it. Thank you all so much.
So quite a passionate speech, with David Tennant being very clear that he and his family have, quote, skin in the game, end quote, a reference to his non-binary child. We've actually covered David Tennant's non-binary child before on the channel, specifically when former comedy writer turned full-time bigot Graham Linehan targeted David Tennant, calling him a, quote, abusive groomer, end quote, for supporting his own child. Graham Linehan was famously dropped by his own agent over said defamation, effectively being fired. Of course, as is a theme today, Linehan lied about what was said in response to the clip I've just shown you, stating, quote, "This man cost me my agent because I objected to him calling women who stood against transitioning to children freaks. No apology since the hashtag cast review either," end quote. This is a lie by omission in that Graham Linehan claims he merely objected to David Tennant wearing a t-shirt telling anti-trans freaks to leave his child alone, when what Linehan actually said was, quote, "only disgraced among the ranks of abusive groomers like yourself and Tennant," end quote. Emphasis added by me. As for the cast review, Graham Linehan is referring to a non-peer-reviewed paper that openly rejected the wealth of peer-reviewed science and promoted known pseudoscience, facts laid out clearly in our video exposing the dangers of anti-trans fascism regarding the cast review and Labour's downfall, specifically the chapter titled Trans Men as Victims, the cast review. Yet the review wasn't merely pseudoscientific, though that is absolutely bad enough on its own. No. An NHS whistleblower has now revealed the facts that Dr. Hilary Cass, the author behind the paper, knew that 16 children took their own lives as a result of an earlier ban on puberty blockers. And rather than discuss said facts openly, Dr. Hilary Cass chose to help the UK government cover up the scandal, allowing her paper to be invoked by that very same government as justification to introduce new and even stricter bans on said essential medical care. That's what Graham Linehan is promoting here, a sham review being used to knowingly and willingly murder trans youth by driving them to such horrific extremes that they take their own lives. Of course, Graham Linehan wasn't the only one to cry about the speech, with Kemi Badenoch taking to Twitter to declare that, quote, "I will not shut up. I will not be silenced by men who prioritise applause from Stonewall over the safety of women and girls. A rich, lefty white male celebrity so blinded by ideology he can't see the optics of attacking the only black woman in government by calling publicly for my existence to end. Tennant is one of Labour's celebrity supporters. This is an early example of what life will be like if they win. Keir Starmer stood by while Rosie Duffield was hounded. He and his supporters will do the same with the country. Do not let the bigots and bullies win." End quote. Don't worry, we won't let the bigots and bullies win. We will stop your attempted murder of trans youth. Because just a couple of weeks ago, Kemi Badenoch publicly boasted about stacking the UK government with known anti-trans bigots, explicitly tethering said conflict of interest to the cast review, the very same cast review that assisted Kemi Badenoch, Victoria Atkins and the Tory party in covering up the facts that the earlier Bell v Tavistock ruling had killed 16 children. Children like David Tennant's non-binary child. That is what she boasted, not confessed, but fucking boasted about. Because Badenoch is openly lying when she stated that, quote, "I will not be silenced by men who prioritise applause from Stonewall over the safety of women and girls," end quote. David Tennant isn't speaking out for applause, he's speaking out because he has, in his own words, skin in the game. David Tennant has a trans child. Kemi Badenoch is openly boasting about creating the conditions that have enabled the murder of trans children. David Tennant is speaking up in defence of his own child, along with all the children who Badenoch's peers have marked for government-sanctioned extermination. Thankfully, Badenoch's crocodile tears aren't working, perhaps in no small part due to the fact that for as much as she pretends like Tennant's defense of his child is about her ethnicity, Badenoch recently defended a white Tory donor, Frank Hester, after he stated that Diane Abbott, the UK's longest black MP, made him, quote, want to hate all black women, end quote, and that Diana, quote, should be shot, end quote. In her own words, Badenoch defended her party's refusal to give back the £10 million Hester had given to them by stating, quote, everybody is accusing and counter-accusing around racism. We need to move away from these tiny things and actually focus on what matters to people. Now, this is trivia. I'm sorry, but I really do believe it is. I am afraid is not really in the high priorities of how we deal with racism in this country. End quote. Again, this is in response to Frank Hester stating that Diane Abbott made him want to hate all black women and that he believed she, quote, should be shot, end quote. Badenoch hand-waved that as trivia, something of no importance, yet now wants everyone to rush to her defense because a desperate father called out her hate campaign that seeks to deny trans youth essential healthcare. Of course, Badenoch is not alone, bringing us finally to the comments made by J.K. Rowling, namely that, quote, this man is talking about rape survivors who want female-only care, the nurses currently suing their health trust for making them change in front of a man, girls and women losing sporting opportunities to males, and female prisoners incarcerated with convicted sex offenders, end quote. Again, completely lying about what David Tennant actually said, how he was commenting in support of the continued survival of trans children, including his own. Trans children that Kemi Badenoch and her peers have marked for slaughter. All of that context gets erased, allowing J.K. Rowling to pull whatever narrative she wants out of her ass. And her elbow must be rather sore from just how far she's reached, considering just how detached her post is from reality. It's not David Tennant and his friends that have targeted and harassed rape crisis centres. It's J.K. Rowling and her friends, united under the gender-critical banner, who have a sordid history of doing just that, as covered on the channel previously. Gender-critical fascists targeted the Survivors Network because they refused to kick a rape victim who happened to be a trans woman out onto the street. So how dare Rowling try to exploit victims of rape for her own personal gain, forcing her and her bigotry down upon us like we agree with her. We don't. As for female prisoners, they're already incarcerated with convicted sex offenders, since, spoiler, women can be sexual predators as well. In fact, prior to 2002, whilst women's prisons only accounted for around 6% of the prison population, they accounted for 12% of all sexual assaults that occurred in prison. That number has since equalised with those seen in male prisons, but it's worth mentioning to dispel the myth that cis women cannot be sexual predators. I have personal experience of just how dangerous it can be to assume that a person is safe because she's a cis woman. As many of you know, both myself and my brother were raped as children inside a women's-only domestic violence refuge. This happened under a reportedly safe roof in which we were routinely assessed by a child psychiatrist, at least in part, because said psychiatrist was only concerned about the dangers outside the refuge. So, not only does this rhetoric demonize trans people, it also endangers vulnerable people by ignoring half the danger posed to us in day-to-day life. So the issue here is not with rapists being added to women's prisons, because they already are. The issue is with the very idea of trans women being treated as women, irrespective of their crimes or whether they've even committed any at all. And that's before we even get to sexual violence by staff in prisons, which people like Rowling never talk about, only caring about said violence when it can be weaponized against trans people. I mean, this is the woman who praised Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita not as a horror story written from the unreliable point of view of a child rapist, but as a, quote, great and tragic love story, end quote. No, seriously, she said that in a recently rediscovered interview on Radio 4, with a part of said interview having been discussed in the Sunday Herald, which was thankfully archived on ASIO quote. Her exact words were, quote, "There are two books whose final lines make me cry without fail, irrespective of how many times I read them, and one is Lolita. There is so much I could say about this book. There just isn't enough time to discuss how a plot that could have been the most worthless pornography becomes, in Nabokov's hands, a great and tragic love story, and I could exhaust my reservoir of superlatives trying to describe the quality of the writing." End quote. Emphasis added by me. The titular Lolita, actual name Dolores Hayes, is 12 in the story when she's kidnapped and raped by Humbert Humbert, the unreliable protagonist behind the story, with Humbert itself being acknowledged as a pseudonym. That is what J.K. Rowling is describing as, quote, a great and tragic love story. An adult man kidnapping and raping a 12-year-old child. It really puts her claims to care about women's and girls' safety into context, and I'll likely return to this topic in a future video. I could go on, but I think I've made myself absolutely clear. Rowling is nothing but a bully, same for Kemi Badenoch. Badenoch was happy gloating about creating the conditions that reintroduced bans that were known to have killed 16 children, yet the moment a parent of a trans child tells her to shut her bigoted mouth and that maybe the world would be a better place without her, suddenly that's uncivil. That's the trans Taliban, as Rowling put it elsewhere. I consider the knowing pursuit of child murder to be far less civil. Yet that is precisely what Rowling has thrown her support behind. Thankfully, people seem to be waking up, seem to be realizing the truth about Rowling and her gender-critical movement, how it's nothing more than an extremist group standing atop a pile of children's bones. I won't lie, I am glad that Rowling, Linehan and Badenoch have shown their hand here, because they've done more damage to their own cause in going after David Tennant, a father protecting his own child, than 1,000 videos put out by the likes of me. Fascists can't help but hang themselves through their own ineptitude. It might take time, but their incoherent mess of an ideology eventually catches up with them, and I hope that is what we're seeing here. Though what do you think? What things would you like to add to David Tennant's speech, if you could? How do you feel about the lack of an active trans participant in this discussion? Are there any other signs that the winds might be changing? Did you notice something I missed? If so, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you appreciate what we do here and want to help out, please consider becoming one of our wonderful patrons who make our work possible. On that note, we'd just like to thank the following people: Matthew Kovac, Hannah Banghart, Gert Van Vorst, Goddess Alita, Marble Wings, Sosh Daniels, Flynn, Higgins the Seagull, and Ocean on a Teaspoon. And for myself, Adita and Levi, take care now.